You're listening to the AdCast with your host, Elliott.
All right, everyone, I want to welcome you to the AdCast. A lot of times I say like I have a special guest, but today this guy is really special. The world tried to keep us apart, but we just said, hell no, we're going to make this happen today. I have my man all the way from across the pond, Mr. Olaf van Gerwen, on the line today. And he is the founder and the CEO and the global creative director of Chuck Studios. He is him and his company. They do some amazing things, and I guarantee you've seen or heard of his brands. Olaf, I want to welcome you to the show today, my man.
Thank you so much. What a warm welcome. What a blazing intro. That's one way to enter a podcast. Thank you for that, man.
Man, no worries, man. I want to say something like you blaze a trail that a lot of people are, if they haven't heard about it, man, they're going to hear about it today. You are one of those creatives, and you influence a lot of decisions that happen at probably the most important office in the world, and that's sometimes the dinner table, you know?
Yeah.
So you influence a lot of things, and I want to tell some folks real quick just some of the things, some of the brands that you've worked with or worked on. You've worked with Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Burger King, KFC, Heineken, and Nestle, just to name a few. But I want people to kind of know exactly who is Olaf. So tell the audience exactly who you are and what you do for your brands.
Well, wonderful. I can do that. If you sometimes hear a dog barking, that's Biggie right there.
Good name.
I'm hoping he'll shut up quickly. I'm Olaf, and I'm the founder and co-founder actually, together with my wife Ellen of Chuck Studios. I started my career in advertising in many different capacities. I started out as an offline editor, became director, became DOP, and over time specialized in food and drinks. Because food and drinks is just a lovely portion of the business, and actually I'm pretty sure that people are going to stay hungry. So that's a satisfying thought. No, but I had a tendency. I was always leaning towards the visual and the aesthetics, and that is very prominent in food and drinks, because if it doesn't look good, it doesn't. It is not appealing. It needs to look amazing. That's when it has that magic draw.
Yeah.
So when I developed that skill, together with Ellen, we built a company. We started 10 years ago, and over the past 10 years, we've gathered. If you say it like that, it's a pretty impressive client list.
Yeah.
So I come from the craft side. I make films. I shoot my own films. And we deliver a product, which is the film or the photography that we make. So that's basically who I am, and based on the fact that we work for so many international clients, we had some other insight that started some other creative juices. But the craft is the core of my business.
So, like for a lot of people who are in marketing or in any kind of advertising, they stumble in it. They stumble in it. And you and your wife have been doing this for longer than 10 years, and bless you for working with your wife. And now we know who the real boss is, Olaf.
Sure. So, make no mistake there.
Make no mistake. So, I mean, what brought you into, I know you've been doing that for 10 years, but what actually led you into that creative space to say, like, you know what, I am interested in this. I want to tell this story,
Well, it's very simple. When I came off school, I was basically interested in advertising, because the advertising at that time looked so fantastically glorious, and there's fantastic work, very visual storytelling. I was really attracted by that. Also by music videos. I did some TV. I didn't find that too interesting because of all the narrative, and I was more into like the pictures, like I wanted to make stuff pretty. And when I started to do music videos, that's when I really got the appetite for pretty images. And when I saw the music videos, always limited budgets, always challenges, and advertising was when where the big boys were playing. So I always wanted to get into advertising. And it was only later that I really understood the value of brand building, of marketing, everything. And at first, I was that stubborn director that was defending his film always, rather than the importance of the brand or the product.
Because you had the passion. You had the passion
Yeah,
behind what you were doing.
there was passion at work, but there was also, when you're young, you think you're sure of everything, and when you're a little bit older, then you start to, wow, what's really at work here? And the real realization of who's paying the bills here and what are we contributing to, and that ultimately is a brand, right? That insight only came later, but the love for, and I also had a deep love for technology. Stepping over from being director to a DP, I was also a photographer in the meanwhile. I loved lenses and film and lighting and all the technology that surrounds it, because my profession is leaning deeply on technology.
Right.
But I love it. I love technology, especially if it has a clear purpose, namely making that cola or that burger look glorious.
Yeah, because there's a lot of technology coming up. And you mentioned earlier, you were talking about, you had the appetite, which is a perfect word or segue to go into what we're going to talk about. When you had that, you were working on music videos and going into doing the food and making it, making the images look good. You were focusing on images. Now, you talked about also some brands, because that word's come up a whole lot in every episode that I've had. So tell me about how you have the power in creating that culinary identity and reshaping what a brand looks like.
Yeah, well, over time, we built a few branches across the globe. So we now have like 5 branches, and we get briefings from food brands all over the globe. And, at the office, we tend to play briefing bingo. There are certain things that are always in the briefing. It's always authentic. It's always, and many of these things, especially in certain categories, briefings tend to be the same. Briefings that we receive are often with images from competing brands, which is fundamentally silly, because you start to look like your competitor then, obviously.
Wow.
And we get a lot of make it look like Lurpak, because people love the Lurpak work. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a butter brand. Originally Danish butter brand by Arla. It's a fantastic brand. They make marvelous campaigns. Wyden out of London has been working on that for decades, and they're doing a magical job at making butter look like a superhero product. So I get a lot of make it look like Lurpak, and then often marketeers don't even realize that their brand is nothing like it. It doesn't need that kind of visual language.
Right.
So over time, I found myself shooting the same beer swirl over and over again for different beer brands. And the same goes for burgers, and the same goes for chocolate, et cetera, et cetera. So we see that brands in the same space tend to start to look alike slowly, because they're looking at the same research, looking at the same category entry points, looking at the same consumer data, and they look at each other. So the one brand has this cool beer swirl, and I want that too.
Right.
Now, we think that's a problem, because then products within a category start to look similar. And the whole idea behind branding is being distinctive and being recognizable, right?
Right.
So we slowly started to think about how can we solve this. And the solution, in our opinion, lies in, a brand has, its core, its DNA, and around it is a brand love key or a brand pyramid or whatever you shape it like. And then there's identities, a visual identity, a sonic identity. We've seen sensoric identities, but the identities is how you interact with the outside world. And we think that food and drink brands deserve a culinary identity. A strategy, choices that were made about how the food is depicted to support what the brand really is, to not make a generic beer swirl, but make a beer swirl that's your beer swirl, and have a reason to make choices about it. And if you do it for a long time, it will become a distinctive brand asset. It will become something by which the brand is recognizable. And that's basically how branding works.
Exactly. But then what happens, when you run across, let's just say one of those brands that say, oh, I want my butter commercial to look just like their butter commercial. And now no one can differentiate themselves. Do you run across a lot of brands that you have to kind of educate them to say, hey, listen, you have to make a change. You can't look like these guys. You need to be your
Sure.
own. So you're helping them with their brand identity almost, right?
Yeah. That's so. Within my company, we develop culinary identities for food brands, which is a strategic consultancy kind of service. So we speak to the brands about: are you aware that you're doing the exact same as your competitors do? Look at a product shot for a beer ad. It's usually a bottle and a glass next to it on a table with out of focus background, and it all
Exactly.
looks fancy. Now,
Yep.
can we do something with that shot that underlines the values that this brand has? The story of the brand, and can we do it in such a manner that over time it will become their way to depict their product? That's the foundation of the thinking. And yes, obviously, we help our clients develop that kind of thinking. We have a nice presentation about that. And if I do that presentation to a brand, they often say, oh shit, now we have a problem I didn't know existed.
Right. So you're helping them
Right?
so basically you're not just the guy that says, oh, we're going to make some great, creative identity for your food. You're also helping them to realize exactly who the hell they are, because probably some of them don't know who they are when they come to you, Olaf.
Well, that can happen, but in order to develop a good culinary identity, much like a visual identity or a sonic identity, the brand needs to know what they're here for, what their purpose is, and what their DNA, what they're made of.
Right.
Basically their positioning. And based on that positioning, we develop that into culinary equivalence. So you cannot you cannot design a visual identity if a brand doesn't know what it's all about.
Great point.
That has to be made clear first, and we stand on the shoulders of what's already there. We do not change the brand itself. We do not change the positioning. We just look at what's there already and how can we translate that into how we deal with the product. Because let's be honest, we've all sat there in rooms talking about which knife to use, or which plate, or which glass, or what is the angle or the moment of the. In which stage does a pasta sauce look its best? Is that when it's pouring out of the pack? Is that when it's sizzling in the pan? Is that when it's on the plate? Is that when it's consumed? Now, defining all of these kind of choices before we go into developing one creative asset can shed a lot of light of how the story is told. Because what is the moment when you depict the food at its best? And it says something about the brand. And then when we have defined that identity, we find that many of our clients find it very comforting if we shoot it, because we've defined that identity. And then the shooting itself, it makes sense that the guys who've made, because yes, we develop identities, but the core of our company is still craft.
Right.
Because we have studios and lights and cameras and staff and crew to shoot these ads and these photos continuously. So it is basically where strategy and craft meet, which is awesome because what's left in between is creative.
Yes.
We don't do creative. We don't do storytelling. We don't develop campaigns really, because that we leave with the Widens and the Mothers and the BBHs of this world. They're much better at that. We don't find ourselves better at that than they are. But we can help also agencies solve puzzles that they are fundamentally often not so interested in. How do we depict the product? We see a lot that on film sets when we're shooting an ad, the creatives tend to go get a cup of coffee when the pack shot turns up, right?
Has there ever been a time where you're developing the creative and like you're working with, the agencies, and the agencies like really like what you're doing and you inspire them with the campaign based off of what you've made?
Yeah, sure. What happens is that we have, for instance, with TBWA here in the Netherlands, which is the leading agency here, they have called us for help on certain brands. Like, what are we going to do with this fundamentally boring product? For them, the product is usually not the most inspirational part of the show. And then they sometimes ask us, can you help us create a story, create an identity around the product itself that we can implement into the campaigns, and successfully so. So we feed off on each other. We are inspired by what they do on a strategic and creative level. And what we bring is something they could never bring, because for us, it comes from the craft side. We really ask ourselves, how does this product look its best? And how do we get some expressions of the brand into the way we depict it?
Wow.
And that is something that creative agencies, and we put it in front of the camera, right? We once had a beautiful case in which we had a cheese brand, and we were so like a wedge of cheese, right? We had it in front of the camera. We were like struggling. How do we make something unique out of this cheese wedge? And then someone flicked some lights off, and only the backlight on the cheese was still on. And we saw that the cheese was glowing, like almost like a lamp.
Oh, man.
And that was like, wow, there's something beautiful there. Now, this was an old cheese. So it brought out the texture, the crumbly texture of the old cheese. And that's where it came from, a craft side. It became a distinctive asset for the brand to light it in this specific way. They have a reason to do this within their brand positioning, because they say they're best eaten at golden hour, when the sun sets and the golden light. That's what they celebrate that's what they celebrate in much of their campaigns. So we took that, elevated that to something bigger, made it a way to light the product. And no other cheese brand has a reason to light it like so.
Gosh, man, that's I love that inspiration that just came from that production, and that's what creatives get paid to do. To be able to have that insight, to be able to see something as simple as a light switch going off and showing the textures of a cheese and saying, "Wait a minute, we got something here."
And recognizing that is something that it's not just that's wrong, but recognizing that something that's great things happen out of luck or serendipity, isn't it? That's the word, right?
Yeah.
No.
We'll be right back with more of the AdCast after a word from our sponsor.
So working with the craft crew from the get-go was very easy. Dealing with Eric right on the front end, I think it was Thanksgiving Day, and he was emailing with me. Not that I expected him to return my emails. That's just the kind of service from the get-go that drew me to this company and ultimately led me to selecting this company. And then dealing with Terry and some of the other guys who were very professional. They walked me through the process of what this video production procedure would be like. It was very helpful and very comforting knowing that I would be taken care of and guided through this process. And then when the film crew got here, they were on time, they were sharp, they knew what they were doing, everything was set up efficiently, and I'm impressed.
When you open a business, you want to make sure that your presence is felt. Not just having your name on a billboard or having your name on the front of your building. You truthfully have to let everyone know that you're in business. So just because you go get your business license, that doesn't mean that the whole market's going to come running to you for your services. There's probably millions of you out there. So what are you doing to be loud and be noticed? You got to make your presence present. You deserve a very important place.
When you guys are creating, is it, let's just say your creative team, when you guys are kind of round table, how are you coming up with, how to make that craft for that brand? I mean, or is it you're putting the sticky notes on the wall, you're doing some deep research? How does that work for you and your team?
Well, in a lot of cases, we get a very defined and well thought out brand document. And then for us, it's usually the simple question is, do the images that they put out in the world, that they put in front of consumers, do they speak the same language and the same values as what the brand says on paper? And often you will see that there is a problem there, because many things there's many marketing people are how should I say it? I think change is something weird, right? If you change something in your brand, you need to be really sure, because you're also going to lose recognition power. But also doing something differently than your competitor does also takes some sort of
bravery.
You need to be convinced.
Yeah,
because you're gonna make something that initially may feel a bit weird because it's just outside the category norms. But I think that weirdness is something great. We find that weirdness because it needs to feel a little bit uncomfortable in the beginning. Because if it doesn't feel uncomfortable, you're clearly doing what you have been doing.
Right. You're just repeating what you've done before.
You're right. So you have to kind of find the weird where it speaks about the brand, fits to the product, and still looks like the product. If you're shooting milk, it has to look white, right? There are certain codes that you cannot mess with. But we start with that journey. Like, what are they currently doing versus what are they saying they're doing?
Wow.
Obviously, that gives a lot of light already. And then I think creativity is basically connecting two things in a way that makes sense, things that weren't connected before. So something out of the real world, or something out of another industry, something out of art. It can come from anywhere, but if it works together in a very logical way with what we do, then it can give direction to make something unique. So first up is a deep dive into what the brand is and what is good about that. Then analysis of what they're currently doing, and then try to stick something new in it that makes sense. And that's usually based on a human insight. It's basically on a behavior. More often than not, it comes from research. There's this tiny little sentence in research that say, hey, this is something that we can make into something that's bigger, because this is apparently how people behave. Right? People never get boring. People are always inspiring, right?
I was just going to ask you that, Olaf. Like, when do you know exactly like when it's time to change from where it was?
No, that's a very good question. We often come on board in a process when a brand is slightly repositioned, or when the visual identity is tweaked or rejuvenated. When the wheels are turning, and for some brands it's a continuous process.
Right.
But when things are changing slightly, that will be the ideal moment for us to come on board and say, hey, listen, let's test if you're in a good place, and let's bring something new. Developing distinctive brand assets is something that every brand should, keep on doing. Look at it's Cheetos, right? With the dust on the fingers.
Yeah, with the dust on the fingers.
Come on, that is a brilliant distinctive brand asset, isn't it?
Yes,
it is.
I love
it's basically a disadvantage of the product. Your fingers get dirty, but you know the brand when you see the orange fingers. Right? It's just brilliant. If we can find, it's not always that. That is great. You cannot always be great. And let's also be honest, Cheetos is one product, one type of appearance, but a dairy brand has maybe 60 SKUs. So what we come up with has to work with all of them. But if you're a mono brand, like if you're beer or chocolate or something, it can be a bit easier. But when to change? That's a good question. When you are changing is a good moment to get started. But I'm pretty honest that marketers always will find also sometimes some discomfort in, are we doing the same thing again?
Yeah.
Right? And I embrace doing the same thing again, because that leads to consistency. But more often than not, when it comes to food depiction, they may not know why they're doing what they're doing. They're just doing things out of habit. And then there may be an opportunity to change something for the better and for the more outspoken visual language.
But now, that's a great point. But let's just say, like, the audience, 5 days, 5 minutes is like an hour to some people now. We are very impatient people, especially like earlier we talked about technology and how much that has to play into things. Let's just say if I'll use one of the brands, for example, that you've worked with before. Let's just say Taco Bell. 10 years ago, you created, one piece of creative or a craft for them. You created a craft for them. And then now, it's 2022 and the audience is so much different. the demographic has changed a little bit. They've grown a little more, right? So then now it's like, now does Olaf and his team have to go in and do another like almost brand audit and reposition the creative, to make sure that that food has that culinary identity again,
Well, I think that in relation to 10 years ago, there's much more touch points.
Yeah,
There's many, many more touch points.
that's true.
There's an opportunity there, because across all these touch points, if you find something that makes you recognizable across all these touch points, you're gonna add bottom of funnel marketing that's also going to work for your brand. Much of the work that we're doing currently is mid to lower funnel, because it's product. It's often not brand.
Right.
If we can find a way to make the food look distinctive to the brand, then also iterations that are lower in the funnel will work for the brand. Will work on distinction and on recognizability and on consistency. So much more now than maybe 10 years ago or even 20 years ago, there is an urge to know what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Yes.
Because you have so many more touch points. Also in store, there's moving screens in stores, and there's moving screens in the streets, etc., etc. We often see that once culinary identity is in place, people and marketers also are a bit relieved, like, no, that we got covered, that we know how we depict the product. We know that we have reasons to, we have pegs, we have anchors that keep us in the same place. So I think that much to the marketing theory that is widespread nowadays, we know that the like 60-40 and the 40% that's going to be middle or lower in the funnel, it still has to look like and act like and smell like the brand.
Yes.
And then 1 and 1 becomes 3, hopefully.
Man, I don't think, even myself included, like even when we were prepping and talking beforehand, I don't think we know exactly how important the culinary identity is, because like you said, it's middle and bottom of the funnel. I mean, you're influencing what someone's taking home for dinner.
Sure.
And everyone's gotta eat, man. Everyone's gotta eat. I don't have to buy a new car, right? So
No.
I don't have to pay attention to the new car commercial. I don't need the sneakers that I see on television. I don't need the clothes, but I have to eat.
Surely,
But
that's the power of what we do. I think it's just it's interesting to know that if your brain sees a wonderful image of delicious food, it will not know the difference between seeing an image and seeing real food or eating real food. In the brain, the same parts of the brain light up,
right?
And that is not something you can stop. You cannot not have that. It's the same. It's the mirror neurons that basically also work when you're scared in a movie. When you're watching a movie and you go, you're not really scared, but seeing someone being scared makes you scared. It's the same working as pornography. Looking at it also has its effect on you. It's the same system in the brain that works with food. So imagine if you see that sauce drip on a burger, you're gonna go, shit, I need that burger now. Come on, I'm gonna run off and get one. That is such a force of nature. It is something that is deeply in our reptile brain. It's not something you can deny. So you need to, as a marketer, you need to use that force for good. But if you're showing a hamburger that is just any generic hamburger, you need to make sure that the people know it is your hamburger.
You know what? I remember a brand, Hardee's used to do that years ago with their burgers, and they always had like these females with their burgers, and you knew it was a Hardee's commercial.
Yeah.
But then I want to ask you this, because you guys work very hard on creating that culinary identity. But then what happens when, what Olaf's team and Chuck Studios has done such a great job, and now it's up to the brand to manage that expectation where they should meet,
We've seen cases in which we developed a culinary identity, and then the brand manager or the marketing manager had to supervise all the teams that are working on the, in this case, a TV ad, to make sure that this thing that we developed, which is all theory until someone's shooting, right? Then it's all just the words on paper and images and examples on paper. But when you're standing there on a film shoot and you have to make it happen, you're going to meet a lot of resistance if you're a marketer. You're going to meet directors and art directors and DPs who say it can't be done, or for this and that reason, I don't want to spend time there. I need, and the sun is setting and 1,000 problems. You're going to have to be a hard ass to say, no, I need it like this. You know, I'm here to get this. And that doesn't always work. Sometimes people don't have the power to convince all of the other teams that are working to be consistent in this manner. And you have to start with the first iteration, because it takes time to build distinctive brand assets. It's not after one ad or one campaign that it's engraved into the brains of consumers. It's not like that. It takes time. So it can be challenging. I can understand, if you're a marketer and you're trying to solve this problem, you're probably the only one in the room that really cares about how your product looks. Because many of times the agencies and the directors and the producers are about the campaign, the story. Is it funny? Is it captivating? Is it emotional? Which is all super important. And I fully agree with that. But is the food depiction on brand is not the highest item on the agenda of the meeting. And then you're the only one in the room that really gives a shit. And that is a hard position to be in. Yeah. Because you have to be the person that said, no, I want sketches. I want to be sure that everyone understands that I want it like this, and I want it always like this. That's an unpopular message.
Yeah, especially like, and we talked about the middle and the bottom of the funnel, because at the bottom of the funnel is usually the consumer. So when the consumer actually, they make that decision based on the influence that you've created for them. Okay.
Yeah, but also the consumer doesn't know if we start, if we decide as teams to build a distinctive brand asset, the consumer is unaware. Yeah, he's going to not know. The consumer is sitting on the couch with a bag of chips and not being unbothered by brands until something spectacular happens. Right, and that can be an emotional story usually, or it can be delicious food that makes him think, oh, I need to get me some fried chicken.
What a great point. Yeah, you make a great point, because if the brand moves so far left or right from wherever they remember it as, now you've gotten their attention.
Well, and there's, as we all know, there's many ways to get attention. But if the eyes are on the screen or on the ad, they have to know it's you. It's that simple, because otherwise it didn't happen. If they don't know it's you, it's the same as not broadcasting your spot or putting your banner out there.
That's true.
If they don't know it's you, it's all theory.
Now, with so many touch points, we talked about all these touch points now, and also being on screen. There's many different screens now. Sure. There's many different screens now. Does that make things a lot easier for you when you make creative and brands, or do you have to say like, okay, this is how we want to make this craft for social, or this is how we want to make that craft for broadcast?
Well, there's obviously different specs for all the different media, but what we are completely used to it now. This is what the world looks like. The world looks like campaigns with 300 deliverables. Deliverables that can vary in format and media, but also in message. Because some iterations are more bottom of funnel, some are a little bit more brand, some are a little bit about consideration. It's such a rich palette of deliverables and we have that almost constantly. There's little brands that only do TV or only do outdoor. It happens, but the bigger brands tend to be kind of a 360 approach, which is the new normal for us. And yes, that can have its effect on the creative, but in terms of identities, you're not going to change your logo.
Right.
Per deliverable.
You're still who you are.
Yes, and the identity is an iteration, an expression of who you are. So that's it. If we do our jobs right, it should not be a question. It should be clear how we depict the food, also in all the different touch points.
Hmm. You brought up the Cheetos. Has there ever been a campaign that you've seen and I know me, like I remember years ago, I started in restaurant before I got in marketing. So I was very critical of every restaurant that I went into because I knew restaurants.
Yeah.
And now being in marketing and creative, you look at campaigns a certain way. Has there ever been a campaign where you said, man, that's good. I wish I had done that. I know you brought up the
course.
Cheetos, but
Yeah, well, in terms of identities, Cheetos is just a fabulous case. What I also love is, and it's gone now, is San Pellegrino. They had this beautiful paper wrapping on top of their cans. Remember that? It's just like
no,
a fizzy.
I got to look it up now.
It's a fizzy water, and they got there's a beautiful, elegant little paper that's on top of every can. That's a super distinctive brand. They're the only ones who have that, and it has a function. It's intended to keep the surface clean because you're drinking from the can, right?
Yeah.
That's also a beautiful asset. But in terms of campaigns, there's clearly there's Lurpak. It's amazing work. They make a boring product like butter into a fantastic journey as a supporter of great cooks. It's definitely worth watching, and it's already going on for like 12, maybe 15 years. I'm not sure. There's Marks and Spencer out of the UK had wonderful campaigns. But there's so many great work being done. I also like, for instance, in Corona, if you get a Corona served, now in the top of the bottle is always, the lime.
A lime, yeah, always a lime.
If you see bar people all over the world complaining, I gotta make the fucking lime again for the bottle. You're right, but that's what you do with the Corona.
Got it, yeah.
Influencing human behavior, that is spectacular. And the humans now expect, that piece of lime in the neck of the bottle. That's wonderful. And then there's many colleagues that make amazing images of chocolate and beers and fizzy drinks and burgers. Sometimes I just saw an ad for a new type of pasta out of I think it was Bertolli. It was an amazing ad. It's like a journey, and I was like green with envy. But
wow.
The guy just did an amazing job. So there's much great work being made, but more often than we would like, it's one-offs. Yeah. It's just a great ad. But I get excited when things are here for the long run.
Yeah. Has there ever been an ad where you wish that you had a do-over?
For an ad that I did myself?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. The stuff that we did in the beginning. Like 10 years ago, things look different from now, but it suited that time.
It suited the time. It was good for that time.
And also for ourselves. My learning curve, basically, I had never shot food when we started our company. And I locked myself in a room with a food stylist, a high-speed camera, and a friend who was assisting me. And I came out 3 days later, dead, but with a reel under my arm. And then I said, well, I can do this now. I taught myself this stuff. It's not fantastic yet, but it's, and actually I think one or two shots out of that session is still in our show reel package.
Wow.
So sometimes, there's just luck, and sometimes there's just, let's stop talking about and start doing it.
Yeah.
That's basically how production people approach things. Much more than creative or strategy or agency. We're very pragmatic type of people. Because we're in the bottom of the process. We're the last one in line. If we don't get it done, it's not going to get done. So I love that. I love to be there.
No, I think, man, I mean, what a great way to be able to look at creative and identity, and with all the different brands that you've worked with and products. Is there one that's more simpler or that you're more interested in than the other?
Well, there's in our company, we all have our specialisms. Eric is our liquids guy. Christy, one of our directors, she has a very art-directed kind of look. And Natasha has a more editorial, more foodie kind of look. One sec. And so we all have our specialism. I've been doing this for such a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little bit the everything guy,
Yeah.
but I love doing burgers because if the build of the burger is right, there's so much color and ingredients. There's so much to gain, and
Yeah.
that response is what I'm after. Like, oh, it's so nice.
Right.
I also love beers because beers now the golden liquid with the fizzy and the white foam. There's beautiful contrast and movement in there. And there are items that are clearly very difficult. Ice cream you cannot shoot with real ice cream because it melts, within minutes. It's gone. So you have to like remake it out of other stuff. Chocolate is the same. Chocolate is a bit fatty, so it's got like a layer of fat on top, which you see in the chocolate, and it solidifies if it's not warmed. So we have to remake the chocolate with all sorts of stuff and ingredients and colorize it and make it look like chocolate, but it isn't chocolate. And that is, that's hard work, but also there's a lot of satisfaction in that. You're going to say, oh, and it's just impossible if you're shooting chocolate for the whole day, knowing that it's fake chocolate. You're still going to eat chocolate.
You have to put yourself in a creative mindset to really be able to do that.
Yeah, but it is, and it's also when you're shooting beer, you're going to have a beer at the end of the shoot because it's just, it's a force of nature. Looking at things that you can eat and that look delicious, you can't then not eat it.
Now we talked about fast food, we talked about beer, we talked about chocolate. There was something that you had opined on, you had written an article about too, where it was in the UK, they wanted to outlaw fast food advertising. I mean, and
that is something that's happening.
And you made a comment, and your comment was, I want to kind of paraphrase it a little bit. You were like, I agree with it, but not like I want you to do it, but I just know that what we do works,
Exactly. Well, it's in a way, the ban on fast food advertising is also a confirmation of that it works, because otherwise they wouldn't want to ban it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. It's a very complicated way. In a complicated way, it's a compliment to our work. But as a human and as a part of this society, I feel that we obviously need to move away from the amount of meat consumption that we do now, because it's simply not sustainable. And let's be honest, there are now wonderful alternatives.
Yes.
They're available and they taste great.
And healthy alternatives as well.
Healthy, and even if they were not as tasty as a juicy steak, then maybe that 80% is also fine. Yeah. Right? It doesn't have to be fabulous every day. If the world, needs that from us, then that's fine. But it is happening. We're thinking that everything that has happened to alcohol advertising or cigarettes advertising, much more even, eventually is going to happen to what they call HFSS, high fat, sugar, and salt stuff. Wow. So everything
kind of like what they did in the U.S. with cigarettes, and tobacco. Yep.
Yes, and I'm convinced that things that we as a society, as a world, don't want, we should have more tax on it, or the opposite, healthy stuff less. And we should basically educate our kids more in schools about what is good and what isn't good, because many people just don't have a clue of how bad candy or sugar drinks or whatever. No, you can have some, but not every day.
Yeah.
It's that simple. It sounds really simple, but
in moderation,
it's hard to break. Yeah, and it's hard to break habits. I'm not a vegetarian. I love my meat, but I'm also dialing down on the meat because I feel the world and my own gut needs that.
Yeah.
It's hard to change people's behavior, and then sometimes laws have to be implemented.
Man, Olaf, I think you and I can go on and on forever about talking about creativity and culinary identity, but you and your team at Chuck Studios is definitely the place where food needs to go to get famous.
Yeah, well, that's I like the sound of that.
I think that is definitely the truth, man. For those folks who are looking to kind of follow you, how do they stay up with you and tell us, about what the company has going on?
Yeah. Well, the first thing, most important, is our newsletter. On our website, chuckstudios.com, you can subscribe to the newsletter. That's like sort of monthly, in which we share, the work we did, but also insights out of the industry and ads that other people have made that we find great or remarkable for some reason. For me personally, LinkedIn is an important platform because I just really like it, and I learn so much there.
Oh, same here.
So follow me on LinkedIn if you want to know more. And then obviously we're a very, very visual trade. So Instagram is where you can find out how we do it. A lot of behind the scenes stuff, a lot of tricks and very visual stuff. And we just embarked on TikTok. Not sure how that's going to play out, but it's fun for now. So we're doing a lot of behind the scenes and a lot of how we shoot stuff and how we shoot beer into the sky and still make it, at 2,000 frames per second. All the spectacular stories are on Instagram.
Oh my gosh,
and on
2,000
TikTok.
frames, 2,000 frames.
That's what sometimes needed to freeze things a little bit and make it look delicious.
Wow. Man, I want to do something with you that I do with just about every guest. I always go through something like a lightning round where, we all talk about marketing, media, branding, and everything else. But I'd like you to tell me exactly where you see certain mediums today. Like you just said you guys embarked on TikTok. So, I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just your opinion on how effective you think these certain mediums are. Okay.
For myself.
Yep, for yourself or even for a campaign, or if you had to launch a campaign.
All right.
What are your thoughts on the current state of radio advertising?
Oh, that's a pain point immediately. I am super uninterested in radio. That's just me.
Mhm.
I'm a Spotify guy. I don't listen to radio ever again. So, but I'm sure there's a lot of people who are. Let's also be clear: you cannot show tasty food images on radio.
True.
So for us, it's not a medium we connect to a lot.
Okay. Good answer. How about newspaper? It's a visual medium.
Yeah, sure. Newspaper. I'm just waiting for them to innovate. When is there moving images in digital editions of newspapers? But newspapers have there's such a clear rhythm. I'm not a newspaper reader often. I do it once a week. But for instance, my favorite cooking platform is the New York Times. The New York Times, if they got a beautiful and very simple recipe platform. And now it's from the other side of the globe, so there's going to be some stuff in that I don't know, which I like.
Yeah.
And they're very good at gathering just lots. So there's a lot of inspiration there. And let's be honest, the New York Times is such a strong brand. If the New York Times says it's true, then it's probably true.
Yeah.
That's in my mind.
That's one thing I do have to give newspapers is they probably fact check a lot better than some of the other outlets out there. All right.
Yeah,
so how about
a lot of authority?
How about television?
I love television. There's a lot of people that believe television is gone. All the theory and the research says no. Still, for brand building on social media is just hard. The stories are quick, are shallow. They pass by in the zap of a thumb. You're out again. But on TV, you can tell a little bit of a story. And what I find the most remarkable, and people forget that, is that if you're in the same room with a group of people, with your family, and you're watching something on TV, this is a joint experience. So if your kid starts to laugh, you'll laugh too. It's like, it's contagious.
Yeah, it's an infectious medium.
Yes, and being together in a room and experiencing that is something completely different than watching it with your headphones on YouTube. There's no togetherness there. You're never going to talk about that ad that you saw on YouTube because if you're sharing the experience together and for some reason it makes you laugh, then you're going to memorize it so much more. So therefore, I feel that television has a super strong storytelling power, and therefore it's great for brand building.
I like the word that you use, and I'm going to ask you now about social media advertising. You use the word shallow, and I like that too because you only get a glimpse. You don't get to get the true story. How about social advertising, and what do you think is your favorite platform?
Well, I think I was recently targeted by a company that builds ovens, and I just saw the oven. I was like, I have to get that oven. It's just so pretty. It's just what I want. So it works like a charm, but it needs to be immediate. If you want to take a complicated U-turn to tell your story, I'm already gone. As you just said, we're restless. We're in this quick-paced society. So much to my point, put your food product on the screen and harvest the power of that thing in your brain that makes you hungry then, and make sure they know it's you. So I strongly believe in that mid and lower funnel communication in social media and social advertising can work like a charm, but make sure that they know it's you.
Great point. And outdoor advertising, and that's the last one.
Yeah, outdoor is also great, but I see a lot of ads in outdoor that are so complicated. I was recently on Schiphol, on the airport in Amsterdam, and I shared on LinkedIn my thoughts about an M&M's campaign. It was beautiful. It's just a yellow surface with 5 little M&M's there and a short little message. It was so simple. Like within 1 second, I could read everything. One message, full of distinctive brand assets. Within, even if I ran past, I would have known it was an M&M's ad. If you keep it simple, one message, not try to put 3-4 different messages in, it gets too complicated. And then it becomes also something that you would hang on your wall, because the art direction and the simplicity, it's just hard to make something simple.
That's the best
and
creative.
pretty. Yeah,
that's the best creative when you would say, you know what, this is good enough that I'd put it on my wall. That's
exactly,
that's the best
or on a T-shirt. In that sense, I really like that campaign, and the simplicity was there. You go. There's an iconic. It's so iconic. It's a long time before you get there as a brand. It's easier as a phenomenal rap crew. That's easier. But still, it's not easy. No, but that's what I'm saying. The iconic quality of brands is something that really can come to life in outdoor.
Man, Olaf, I want to tell you, man, you speak of iconic. My friend, you and your work and your team, you guys are iconic. And what you do, man, you influence things around the world, bro.
I hope so.
I'm happy to have you on today, man. I really am. I enjoyed our conversation, man. One more time, give that shout out for your website and your social handles.
Yeah.
And I want them to look you up.
Website is chuckstudios.com. My name is Olaf van Gerwen on LinkedIn. Very simple. Type the name and you'll get there. And Chuck Studios on Instagram. Those are the most important ones. And thank you so much for your time, man. I really enjoyed this conversation.
I did too, man.
I hope you're gonna have a lot more in the future. And I will stay attached to the show. Thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate that, man. And for everyone just giving us, we want to thank you guys for giving us your most valuable asset, which is your time. It's the one thing, regardless of how much money you have, you can't buy any more of it.
True.
And if you feel this podcast has been a help to you, it could be a help to another entrepreneur, marketer, or business owner, don't forget to share it with them. And also, we'd love you guys to be able to give us a great rating on our podcast. And thank you again to our guest, Olaf, and thank you for trailblazing creative in the world. This is the AdCast.
Thank you.
Hey guys, I'm back. I hope that you enjoyed that episode of the AdCast. If you didn't, go online, give me a review, and tell me how you want us to make it better for you. And if you did, give us a 5-star rating anywhere that you listen to your favorite podcast. But I want to thank you for your most valuable asset. That's your time, and thank you for listening. Enjoy the AdCast, and stay tuned for another hot episode coming up soon.